tell us here. There we are.
Hey.
Hey.
Here we are Monday. Good to see you, Cindy. So today we're talking travel movies that have inspired you to go somewhere or check some place out. So we've got a couple special guests. So
yes. Let's let Miranda and Jesse introduce themselves. Miranda, would you like to go first? Just tell us a little bit about you and where you're at today, because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Sure. So my name is Miranda Young, and I've been on the show before. I'm better known as the Ghost Biker. I have a travel series where I travel around the country on my motorcycle to different haunted and historic locations, and we highlight those locations on the show. I was blessed back in 2021 to be able to form a company known as History, Highways, and Haunts, where we talk about those different locations with my best friend and business partner, Dr. Christy Sumner. And so we actually ended up opening the historic Scott County Jail, which is where I'm sitting right now. It is an old jail that was built in 1904 and was in operation until 2008, sat abandoned, got a tourism grant in 2017 where they came in, painted, freshened it up. Still sat abandoned until 2021 when my business partner and I approached the town of Huntsville and got them to allow us to open up a true crime museum that is on all 3 floors. That's open essentially during the daytime every day but Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then we're open in the evenings as for after dark tours. And we also have a paranormal research center set up here as well.
So cool, Miranda. We have to come visit you.
I know.
Absolutely.
Cindy and I have to totally come visit.
Yeah. Sorry to make you follow that, Jesse.
Yeah. No, that is great.
I'm like,
yeah.
Wow.
No, that's great, Miranda. All right. So I am Jesse Jackson. I am dialing in from Grapevine, Texas. I am the director of dispatch for a company called CoachNet. We offer carefree RVing. So we have members who travel across the U.S. in their motorhomes and pulling their RVs. And when they run into issues, we offer a wide range of roadside assistance, everything from finding vendors to do jump starts, to unlock they've locked their keys in their car, to we have on-spec technicians that will help you light your furnace and work on wire slides. So we are getting into our busy season, as you talked about, Miranda. A lot of people travel in their RV on the summer, and so that's what we're doing. When I'm not at my day job, I am a podcaster that is a massive Bruce Springsteen fan. And so Set Lusting Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast, is almost hit 850 episodes. I've been doing this over 6 years. I've talked to Springsteen and other music fans from around the world, including Russia, Europe, Australia, so Canada, all over the US. And April's been nice enough to be on the show. And so I'm always looking for people who are passionate about music to join me to talk about how the power and magic of rock and roll helps our lives.
Yeah,
it's great. I love this. We have such a great group of people, April, to talk to.
I know.
So today we're talking travel movies. So we know we have a ton of movies. There's lots of good content finally coming out. But let's just talk a little bit about what are some of your favorite movies that have inspired you to get on a plane, a train, or a bus and go somewhere because you liked either the story or the scenery or something like that. So Miranda, you want to give it a start? What's one of yours? We'll just kind of go around the virtual room.
Sure. So I obviously I'm a biker, and probably my first and one of my favorites would have to be Easy Rider.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. With showing the travel, showing it by bike. That was probably one of the first ones that I was introduced to as a kid that not only inspired me to travel, but then also I would have to say travel by bike.
Yeah, I like that it inspired the mode of transportation, right? Like you just, that's fascinating. Jesse, what do you got as a travel movie that's on your list?
So I'm going to start with my gimme two. I will say the new there is a brand new documentary out, Bruce Springsteen, No Nukes. That is a brand new, it was back in the late 70s, they had a no nuke film. And that was the first time that Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band had been filmed. As Bruce talks about it, he was worried that if he watched himself on film, he would become self-conscious and couldn't do the job. So they took the 2 nights that they had performed in Madison Square Garden, weaved it into one like an hour-and-a-half film. And so since I am always after Bruce Springsteen touring, it has been too long since he's been there. So that is the latest film that made me want to go back to see Bruce perform live again.
I love
it. I love it.
We were wondering if there'd be overlap. I love that there's so many eclectic movies. What do you got, April? Because I've got a couple on my list.
I've got a couple. I always wanted to go to Ireland because I knew my great grandmother was from there. So I started like in the 90s. There was a movie like with Matchmaker with Janine Garofalo, and it was all filmed in Ireland. It was funny, it was romantic, it had all the makings, the scenery. So that just added to my interest. And then there's been other, Irish film movies like Leap Year with Amy Adams, great scenery, just great storyline. It makes you feel good. And, we all, I don't know, as a girl, sometimes we all are looking for those, just locations like that are feel good and romantic. And
I'm trying to think, there was a movie, wasn't it Matchmaker?
Matchmaker is another one, and I
film.
loved it. And some of those I can watch again. March comes up, and I rewatch them. And so then, like, that was my first international trip. I told my husband, like, we have to go to Ireland. I'm planning it myself. So that was the first big trip we did on our own, rented our own car, and I plotted it all out. And I would go back in a heartbeat. Loved it.
Well, that was one of mine. I have not gone to Ireland, but The Quiet Man, John Ford's classic, is set with Maureen O'Hara, John Wayne, is set in Ireland. Absolutely a wonderful movie that gets shown a lot at St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
And it is a film that if you had not spent, it will make you want to see, because it is a beautiful film showing Ireland off. So yes, I'm going to echo you. I haven't made it yet, but I want to.
And Jesse, you can stay in the cottage that they used for Quiet Man on the Aran Islands.
Very nice.
I took the boat over, and we actually stayed in this cottage that they built for filming, and then they've kept it there, and it's now like a bed and breakfast, and the doors are short and tiny. And it's just out there on this island. You must go.
You must go.
What do you got, Cindy?
I always talk about Two for the Road. It's an Audrey Hepburn movie in 1967. And I was an old movie buff when I was young. I've always loved old movies. Albert Finney is in it. And it's a lovely little romantic story of the two of them and how they met traveling. But the film just goes flashbacks to like 1960 present day, but earlier in their relationship when they met. So there's so many scenes of them in like Europe countryside, like pushing a car up the road, and just the scenery and the whole adventure of travel, and also how travel changed for them as they went from being, 22 to 42 and with kids and everything, but they still continued that travel bug throughout the whole film. So I love Two for the Road. It's definitely, if you want to look at older scenery of old Europe, for sure, that's on my list.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo that to tie into that, because in high school, junior high, I was kind of like that old soul too. I loved old movies, black and white.
Yep.
I loved everything Audrey Hepburn was in. Charade, I could watch over and over. And I think it takes place in Paris. And then there was like, I think there was a Rome movie.
Yeah, there was a Rome movie.
Yes. So same thing. I had a list of Audrey Hepburn movies. So there was some overlap. But that too, as a high school student, and I never did the language exchange. So it just fed my, desire to go and travel. And you can keep watching those movies and look at the locations. And
love it.
All right, we're back to Miranda.
Yeah, Miranda, what do you got?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of tie off of both of those with the feel-good movie and the international travel. And it's always funny because I always seem to watch this movie anytime I'm on a plane, but I love the movie Mamma Mia. And when
Oh,
they're
yes.
traveling, and when they're traveling over to, I believe it's Italy,
Yeah.
Greece, that
Greece,
area.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so absolutely love the movie. Such a feel-good movie. I am also a huge music buff. Anything from my favorite is the 80s hair bands, but I absolutely love, classic ABBA, classic 70s
Yeah.
music and such. So any type
Yeah.
of music. And that movie, for some reason, doesn't matter how I feel. I mean, you can't watch Mamma Mia without smiling. And
That's right.
Right.
so, and the scenery is beautiful. I have not been there yet, but I always watch it every time I travel for some reason on the plane.
It is one of those movies that if you're not feeling so great, you can watch. Like what my daughter and I will watch that. Like you're having a shitty afternoon, and it's just
Yeah.
like, let's watch Mamma Mia. That's an uplifting. It's a pick me up, right? Absolutely, it's happy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not a movie, but the Durrells is, if you haven't watched that series, the Durrells, it's also in Greece. It has a similar vibe. It's very happy, very silly, very making it on their own, sort of not follow. I love that as well. It's another set in Greece. If you want to see what Greece looked like in 19, yeah, beautiful. There's a couple books that it's a semi-true story, but it's very definitely drama. It's not, it's based on facts, but not actually factual. Jesse, what do you got for another one? Let's hear some more.
So the most important thing is Miranda now needs to join me to do a hairband episode
Yeah.
on set listing
Oh,
groups. Okay, so
absolutely.
we have to make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hey.
so I have multiple, and I know we're going to go several rounds, but one of the places that I have gone is there is a documentary available on Amazon called Neat. And it is all about the history of bourbon.
Ooh.
April and Cindy know how much I love the Kentucky Bourbon Trail.
Yes.
It is truly one of the, it is one of the best in in USA trips you can take. It is you will see beautiful scenery, Kentucky horse farms. You can throw in Mammoth Cave there is and there are all these different distilleries where you can go and they will tour, and each distillery has a unique tour, even though a lot of them go the same thing, because there's the laws of bourbon. It's the official United States alcohol, and it's the only alcohol that is ruled, that Congress actually makes rules on what can be called bourbon. So Neat talks about that, gives a history, and there is Freddie is someone who worked at Buffalo Trace, told the story that he had been given by Buffalo Trace this really expensive bottle of whiskey, bourbon, and he and his father and his brother had a drink, and then he went to put the cap on, and his father said, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, this is expensive bourbon, we shouldn't." And his dad says, no, we should enjoy it. That's what it's made for. And within a year, both his father and his brother had passed. And so Linda, my wife, when we got to meet Freddie at Buffalo Trace, we told him that she had done that a couple of times with some of her favorite bourbons, that instead of saving it, she opened it and shared it with friends and family because of that story. So Neat, and then go to Kentucky Bourbon Trail.
Yeah. I love it.
It's interesting you say that. I'm actually hosting it's a haunted and history motorcycle ride in September that's going to be going along the Kentucky Bourbon Trail and ending at the Octagon Hall Mansion there in Franklin. So I look forward to checking that out. Yeah,
and the Buffalo Trace has a night haunted. They have a ghost tour.
Perfect.
So it's in perfect.
Make a note of that.
Yeah, there is. The beauty is you can be as quick, or as if you want to rush through it, you can do 2 or 3 distilleries a day, even 4, or if you want to take your time, just do 1 or 2. Just have a designated driver, which luckily I am. But we love going to that. So you will have a blast on that. That fits perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, it's so funny. I thought, when we said Miranda and Jesse, and both of you are wonderful people, but who knew you guys had such a connection? So
I know this is
I'm with April.
Yeah. What do you got, Cindy?
was just reading our comments. I'm gonna
Oh.
read somebody. Katie McCarthy's on, and she said she's a Bruce neighborhood. She's a Jersey girl. Kathy Dunn is giving us some list here. I'm gonna,
She probably has a
Roman.
big list.
She got the one Roman Holiday. That's the Italy one.
Yeah.
That and Shirley Valentine and a few of those, and she's suggesting The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is also
Oh,
on
that's fabulous. Yeah.
my list as well. And I think I knew this, but I saw it, so it's queued up on my Amazon. There's also an older version, like a 1950s or 60s version of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which I did not know. So now I have to watch the old version of
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
My other go-to is Midnight in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the scenery, right? Just I cannot get enough of Midnight in Paris. I can turn it on, turn the sound off, and just have it running. It's like, just love.
Yeah, that's a fabulous one. Yeah. And Owen really, Wilson. And
yes.
Yeah, it's just a great movie. And the perfect. Going back and forth between the night, the day, the time frames. Yeah, love that movie.
That's a great movie. What do you got, April? Anything?
Well, I've got a few others. Yeah. I haven't been, I'll be honest, I've never been to New York City, but there's so many great movies about New York City. And often I'll go back to like Serendipity from 2001 with John Cusack, and all the great places that they meet and they have these experiences, because it's the experiences with the architecture and all the fabulous places in New York City. And it really sheds a really wonderful light on New York City, that because, oftentimes if you kind of view LA or New York as like, oh, that's a big scary place. I don't know how to, it's gritty, and I don't know how to navigate the whole, they do these trains and the traffic and the people just walk and, the craziness, being from the Midwest, that's kind of like, big city or something, but
madness. It is.
Yeah. There's a lot of great New York City movies, but that one is one I can watch over and over.
All right. Miranda, what do you got? Let's just keep going. I'm sure we have time.
We do, yes. So Sex and the City, after you had mentioned I fell in love with that show, and being able to finally go. I've been to New York a couple times, and kind of like what you said, April, coming from the mountains here of East Tennessee, very, very different. And so I really enjoyed going up there and actually going to be able to visit some of the different locations that they highlighted in not only the series, but also in the movies. So the Sex and the City movies were something I enjoyed and really inspired me to check out more places there in New York.
Cool. That's great. Jesse, what do you got?
So I always think too of the Home Alone 2 that was set in New York City.
Yeah.
Because it makes you want to go see New York in Christmas, which I've been able to do at couple of times. Mine, let's move south a little bit to DC. One of my favorite movies is Aaron Sorkin's The American President. Truly a great movie. Annette Bening, Michael Douglas, a very romantic, a really thoughtful film, but it also makes DC look beautiful.
Yes.
And it makes you want to go and see the Lincoln Memorial, the White House, the Vietnam Memorial, all the different places. And DC is a beautiful city to visit, the Smithsonian. And I believe that film really does make and there's a lot of great films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and other films set in DC, but I think The American President really does make it look beautiful and wants you to go kind of immerse yourselves in this nation's capital.
Yeah, good choice. Nice. Cindy.
Me again. I can never say that. Darjeeling Unlimited, the Wes Anderson film on the train, because I love trains and I love that film. It's funny. I actually like all Wes Anderson films. He just released The French Dispatch, which also was pretty good. And they're just colorful, and it's almost like watching a children's book anytime you watch an Wes Anderson film. Just the colors and the whole way that he does it. But that particular one, they keep getting back on and off the train, and it's a journey through Asia and India. So there's so much going on. They hop off and talk to locals, and they do all this crazy stuff. So that is absolutely on my top of the list. I will also put that on, and I can turn the sound off, and I just like to have the images in the background. And I know the film well enough to where I know what's happening. So what do you got, April?
Well, my dad was always like a big fan of Westerns. So growing up, we always had these old Westerns on and I've always had a love for history. So I didn't particularly write down a specific Western movie. There's a bunch of them that have John Wayne and they have these old buildings and little towns. But in Santa Clarita, the Melody Studios, they used to do the Cowboy Festival there, and you could go and actually see a lot of the filming locations. And every spring they did this Cowboy Festival. But then recently they moved it because Deadwood, I think, started filming there, so they couldn't use it. But just those kind of movies inspire my, to go to Bodie and the ghost towns in Montana. River Runs Through It is a fabulous movie. The scenery is super lush for places like that, for Montana, the wide open spaces, the fly fishing, just that whole experience of the openness of the West that we have.
Oh, that's great. I love those. I watched a lot of old Western movies too.
I
think with you. Yeah.
John Ford used Monument Valley a lot in his, and so in Stagecoach and Searchers and all these other movies. So when you mentioned, that's immediately what I thought of. So great choice.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I couldn't think of it because I did take a film class in college and we watched Stagecoach on this huge screen, because back then, having a big screen when you're years ago was a big deal. What do you got, Miranda?
So I'm also a big fan of hiking and movies and stuff that's set, in the wilderness and out in the woods. And I'd probably have to say A Walk in the Woods. Is another one of my favorites. Where it's about rediscovering the wilderness there and with the Appalachian Trail, and it's based on the true book by Bill Bryson, and just the storyline, but then also just where it's set. I would love to hike the AT. I've got several friends who have done it several times. I don't know that I would have the time for it, being so busy, but that's one that I really enjoyed watching, was that one.
Yeah. And you're making me think of the Camino movie, The Way, with Martin Sheen. That's another really wonderful movie, and it's done on the Camino Santiago, which is fantastic. And it's a true story too, which is a beautiful hike and outdoors.
It was a tie between those two.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because when I watch one, I always think of the other.
Yeah, that's definitely on my list. The Way, I loved that, and I didn't get turned on to that movie until very recently. And I was like, oh, there's an actual movie that walks the whole Camino, and I was, oh, this is fantastic. And I had a friend of mine who her friends, so they walked it, a couple of girl sisters walked it, and they did a review of that movie. And in watching that, they were saying that it's pretty accurate of what he was sharing. So that was what was also nice, is like, if you want to know what it's like to walk the Camino, this is a fairly accurate representation of it. So that's a good list. Jesse, you got another one?
The other thing you made me think of what is Wild, right? With that gives from the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go old school. Growing up in our house, right? Anytime there was an Elvis Presley movie on, you watched it.
Right.
So Blue Hawaii was one of his best formula films. Colonel Parker made the decision that they didn't have to be good, they just had to be fast. But Blue Hawaii was one of the better formula pictures. And it did, when years ago, my wife and I had won a contest, and the company I was working for sent, people who had achieved their sales group to Hawaii for a week, and then certain operation people ended up getting nominated. I got picked, so we got to go to spend a week in Kauai, and we watched Blue Hawaii to kind of like, oh, let's look at that. And so it's a beautiful film. It's a fun film, and it does show a beautiful side of Hawaii. So I was really happy to see that, and had to give Elvis a little love.
Yeah, I love that too. That's so true. And in the 50s, that did, it really spurred the tourism to Hawaii, and just the whole, the shirts and all the, just the fun of going to Hawaii. Great choice, Dusty. Love it.
Yeah.
What do you got, Cindy?
Oh, I'm gonna go with the Motorcycle Diaries. Another old
Yes.
movie, subtitles and all. But that's another journey, right? They're on a mission and they're going. Really a great, great story. I've read the book and watched the movie several times. It's very good. Um, very much like Wild, just going out and discovering yourself by discovering the world. It's part of what's happening and meeting other people. So really good book. I like that one and the movie. You got one,
Yeah.
April?
Yeah, when Miranda brought up about the motorcycles and stuff like that, it kind of brought to mind A Good Year with Steve Martin, the birding movie.
I love that movie.
And even though I'm not technically a birder, being a photographer, it's the same concept. I would sit at my desk and it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, the wildflowers are popping and I'm looking at where I can go and can I take an extra day off? Oh, I saw that the tulips in Amsterdam, can I plan to go in a couple of weeks and like
Right.
go into my boss and be like, okay, who can I shift my days around? So I love that movie. I think it's just that whole thing about wanting to get outside and capture, in their case, the birds. And if you're a photographer, like see a place in its scenic best and, making your plans and just go do it. I just love the fun, the energy, Steve Martin's great, of course. And it's just a fun movie and just really showcases all these fabulous places you can go to see birds. And that's a whole nother genre of things to get outside for.
That is all-time favorite movie of mine as well.
Yeah.
I think it's The Big Year, right? That's
The Big Year. You're right. I probably got that wrong. Maybe instead of A Good Year, The Big Year.
I think it's The Big Year. Because you're doing something because there's a couple of movies called The Year or The Good Year, but I think it's called The Big Year because I think that's what birders call it. Right when they do it.
When you got to get so many birds in a year.
And they don't, you feel like they're traveling in that movie all over the world, but they're really traveling in the North America because it's a contest for North America. But even though they go on these great excursions and hopping on planes and going into these very different landscapes at different times of the year, it's quite amazing. So
it is. That's incredible. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got time. Let's do one more round and see what we can get in the next 2 minutes. Miranda, what do you got?
Really any of the National Lampoon's Vacation movies.
Yes. Great.
Yeah, because it's about the journey there, and then the stuff that happens along the way. So everything from European vacation to even just Christmas vacation. Because to me, every time I watch that, that doesn't just transport me to another place; it transports me back to my childhood and remembering that time. Being out of school, being at home with the family. So definitely any of the National Lampoon's Vacation movies.
Good choice.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I know.
Absolutely.
We got to say that one. I watch it every year.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites.
Yes.
And it kind of prepares you for all the, you're like,
mayhem.
Okay, all the mayhem, anything that could go wrong. It just instills that like plan for the worst and have the best time and just keep smiling because it's like you may have to trudge across that parking lot and end up back at that counter
exactly
and you've lost your piece of paper or whatever it is. That's just a great scene.
And you're not alone because it happens to everyone. It's so relatable because we've all been there. Jesse, you got another one for us?
Yes. When I'm not a big fantasy fan, but I went to see the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it was filmed in New Zealand, and I absolutely fell in love with the thing. So that is on my list of I would love to go. I was so jealous. Several years ago, Bruce was touring in Australia and New Zealand, and I was like, okay, boy, talk about knocking off 2 notches if I could have made that happen. So I've never been to New Zealand. It absolutely looks beautiful. So that movie makes me, when I see that, similar like when you watch the Starz show Outlander, you want to see all that, you see all that beautiful scenery when they're filming in Scotland.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So much great movies.
Yeah, there's so many, and I can't think of the name of it, so it's escaped me because there was another as you were talking. So you go, April, maybe it'll come to me.
Well, I was just last thing I was gonna, it's not a movie, but Feed Phil was a series on Netflix.
Okay.
And talking about places I want to go, I didn't know much about Lisbon. It was in season 1 back in 2018. So I'm sure you
Okay.
can still find the episode. And he goes to Lisbon, and it's like all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, why have I not heard of this place? So now I must go to Lisbon. It's like high on my list.
Yeah. It's not a travel movie. It's the one where it's got oh no, I can't even think of what it is. It's in Italy. All right. So I'm gonna have to come back. I'll put it in the comments because for some reason
Yeah,
my
just
brain
put it in the
cannot.
comments.
No problem.
I
Yeah.
can't even get the words. So
Our half hour is up.
Our
It's
half hour is
10:30.
up.
So
Yeah.
thanks everyone. Thanks for Miranda and Jesse for joining us. If you like this series, please like, comment, subscribe. Cindy and I are doing these lives often and inviting special guests like Miranda and Jesse. Go check them out. We'll put their information in the comments. And every
Yeah.
other week we do a coffee chat. So if you want to chat with other travelers and share fun stuff like this, check it out. Thanks, guys.